Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where today we're checking out a number of licensed movie games for the Amiga.
So original. Did you come up with that yourself?
But I have set down a number of rules to try and make this interesting. With one of them, well, bending them slightly. See if you can guess what they are in the comments before the end of the video.
What obvious engagement bait.
So let's all go to the lobby and grab some popcorn and a drink of choice as we start off with The Lion King. Oh, wait a minute, this breaks the rules. I know. Die Hard 2. Die Harder. Made by Teartext, this was released in 1992. And what we get here is a rail shooter. A genre that has become weirdly popular with the more modern licensed arcade games. But it wasn't all that common to make this type of shooter just for the home micros. Now what makes this even more interesting is that it actually supports light guns, so all 10 of us that had the light phaser had something else to play outside of those packing games. Even if this game is a relatively basic one at that. But it does try to recreate some of the locations from the movie. And it works in the style of having baddies show up from various points where you then have to dispatch them, before it then scrolls on to the next area. Now one cool thing is how destructible the environments are, with monitors and windows that will crack when hit. And there's even various collectibles. The important ones to go for are the guns, as you have limited ammo. Now sometimes this might top up your ammo, while others it might give you a whole new weapon. You can also top up your health, or if you find the flak jacket, it will make you invulnerable for a while. Honestly, that is a flak jacket, or according to the manual anyway. Plus you can get more grenades, that look more like missiles, but there will be times when you just want to clear the entire screen. Just be careful as there are civilians walking around, which includes letting your kids just wander about in the middle of this hostage situation. This is about what you'd expect from the developer and the type of genre it is. There isn't much in the way of presentation or even trying to tell the story, and in some ways it could have been based on anything. Batman.
What are you? I'm Batman.
Released in 1991, this was developed by Ocean Software. But don't worry, not all of the games on this list are going to be by them. Now this is more or less the archetype for the multi-gameplay style that ruled the licensed games at the time. With the idea that you would try to recreate parts of the film using different types of games that would suit the moment. Now this starts off with a fairly large platforming section. We have to work our way through this labyrinth of the Axis chemical plant to find the Joker, requiring you to use the Batarang to take out enemies at a distance, as this Batman don't punch. You'll also need to swing across gaps. Now this version of Batman was only released for the home computers, with the Amiga version being the only one that you could get for the first few months. And the success of this game led to many other film tie-ins using this style. And if you actually manage to complete the platforming section, which, to be honest, is pretty difficult, you'll get on to driving the Batmobile, having to avoid cars and then use the grapple to go around those corners. And then we get on to the puzzle section, where you have to work out the combo of chemicals that are poisoning the people, which was always my favourite part of this game. Now none of this really tells you the story of the film, but if you've watched it, then you'll recognise where each of these parts come from, like flying through Gotham trying to grab the balloons, or taking the long, very long walk up the church tower towards the end of the film. They did a great job of making everything recognisably from the movie version of Batman, and not just the main character, but also some of the baddies, which includes the overly large HUD at the bottom. And also the odd sample from the film in that title music helped sell it as well. Fantastic Voyage. Created by Centaur in 1991, this is based on the film that came out in 1966, which might be a record for the time between a film and its game tie-in. The presentation level for this game is high, with some nice looking cutscenes, and then once we're in game, well, it still looks nice for a game that's based inside of a person, with some interesting looking effects going on. Now this isn't quite the straightforward shoot 'em up that it might appear in screenshots, as it's also a bit of a maze that you're going to have to work your way around the map. And you have direct control over the Proteus, with enemies showing up quite often to get in your way. That you can avoid if you want, but if you manage to take out 3 of them in a row without missing once, then you'll get a shield boost, which is an interesting idea to try and reduce the constantly firing style that people like me have. And because you can turn the craft around, if you hold down the fire button it will actually lock you in that direction and keep shooting, which I think is a decent touch. As you go, you're going to have to keep your eye on your fuel, oxygen, as well as your shields, with there being canisters to top up those first 2, and that trick for the 3rd. I'm not sure why we need 2 separate gauges. I guess they just decided they wanted to make this even more difficult than it already was. But I guess it's all trying to play into the film's premise, and I do think this game does a great job of linking itself to the source material, at least in the cutscenes. And what also makes this game slightly unique is that it's the only one that got a CD TV port. And I doubt it would shock many to find out that they didn't really add anything. But I am quite impressed that they didn't just make a very bog standard shooter. Hook. Another game by Ocean, which they released in 1992. But they actually tried something different this time, and they made a point-and-click adventure. And I think this looks really nice, from the intro to the in-game graphics. It actually looks better than some of the PC-ported adventures that the Amiga got, even if that HUD does take up a huge amount of space, which is also filled with 2 animated faces of the main people. That will change in time. For the most part, after the intro, the game is telling a very loose version of the film's story. You spend the first half of the game trying to find Hook and the children, which will require him finding pirate clothes, as for some reason no one will accept him looking like a businessman. And this will obviously require money. And how else are we going to get some? With all of these pirates around, we're going to go to a dentist, who doesn't seem to be all that good at their job. But they will pay for your gold teeth. This gives you an idea of the type of puzzles that you'll have to deal with in the game. The interface at least won't give you much of a challenge, as there are only 5 actions, which is quite simple for the time, but considering that we'd soon have games that have just 2, I think it's fine. more so when this is aimed at kids. Now we also have a dialogue tree, but the way you interact is a little weird. You right click to change what is currently shown as the dialogue option, which means you'll have to keep clicking it to see what all your options are. It's a little annoying, but overall I think this is actually a great little game. It's not a particularly long one, if you know what you're doing it's barely over half an hour, but I guess the longevity came from having to solve all those Neverland logic puzzles. Dick Tracy, the crime-solving adventure.
Crime rules our fair city.
Developed by future FIFA developer Distinctive Software Inc. in 1992, this one ties into the 90s Dick Tracy movie. That one with the distinctive style. That is actually captured in-game, with a strong blend of cartoon and film. The game itself is a bit of an action-adventure, as we're going to have to solve a number of crimes. Now we start all this by normally heading out to the station and driving around, in what is effectively an open world, where you might spot some of the baddies driving around, but eventually you should get radioed about a crime in progress, and you'll want to head over there as quickly as possible. As the faster you get there, the more likely you are to catch those crooks in the act, which can save you a bit of bother. The game then switches to a side-on view, where the controls are, well, a little bit weird. With Dick Tracy having this weird slow movement before he starts running, and then just pressing up will make him jump. But if you're walking, then he'll just move up or down the screen itself. I can sort of get what they were trying to go for, but I don't think it quite works. You also have a gun that you can shoot at the baddies, which means that picking up the clues that you'll discover isn't as simple as pressing the fire button. Instead you have to hold an angled down direction towards it to pick it up. That took way longer to work out than I expected. You can then go back to the crime lab to try and work it all out. The game itself is full of speech samples and some nicely done artwork, and I think this is actually quite an interesting game. It's like LA Noire just with Dick Tracy and done decades before. I have to admit, I did not know about this one before working on the video, but I might have to put more time into it.
Have you got something for me, Breathless?
I sure do, Tracy, but right now I thought you should know about this.
Gremlins 2: The New Batch. Coming from Motive Time in 1990, I'd class this one as a sort of run and gun game, where we play as Billy, who has a very odd range of weapons. From a flashlight that sounds more like a phaser, to telephone handles that act as boomerangs, and tomatoes. And if you do well enough, you can actually buy better weapons, but they're all equally as weird. But you're going to have to be extremely handy with the rapid fire, as those evil gremlins will come at you hard and fast, and from every direction. And in the first level, they even knock things over to take you out. So as you can imagine, everything leads to a very quick death. Which they must have realised was annoying at some point, as they give you a decent chunk of lives to start with. The goal of each level is to try and find the yellow G symbol, which turns out to be something of gizmos. and is going to be useful to take out the Gremlins at the end of the game. And when you have that, you're going to also need to make your way to the exit elevator, so you can go onto the next level of the building. With each section of the building doing a reasonable job of reimagining the places from the film. I think graphically it's not too bad. The in-level ones are detailed enough and you can tell what's going on. And the huge range of Gremlins is simply impressive. And the single cutscene is nicely drawn.
Gizmo.
Now, is this a good game? No, not really, particularly with its brutally hard and cheap deaths. But you know what? I think they actually captured the madness and weirdness of that film. Jurassic Park. Ocean is back once again with this 1993 release, and what we have here is a bit of a top-down shooter adventure thing. It's a little hard to pigeonhole, as while it starts off being top-down and you have a few weapons, you're not always shooting. If anything, you're stunning the dinos to start with while you're trying to do something else, as you get this taser that will slowly recharge. So you better hope that that first shot hits the dinosaurs. But later on you will find more powerful and ammo based weapons. And you will need these as you'll have to explore some very maze-like areas, all while learning what parts of the scenery you can climb up or through, as it's not always clear. Now what we need to do is try and find the kids, because they can never stay still. But you'll also need to find something else to help you get out of the level. Now if you manage to get far enough into the game, you might also come across one of its party pieces, the first person sections. Now these obviously run a little better on an AGA machine, and it really was aimed at that as this did come out first on the A1200, with the original Amigas getting it a few months later. The film got quite the number of different takes on the various machines. Yeah, they might be using similar ideas, but for the most part they are quite different. It's surprising that they would make so many unique takes on the movie. But this top-down approach was the more common one. And I do think it does a great job of recreating the look of the films, with the dinosaurs looking great, with the larger ones being very intimidating. To, well, the locations that do a great job of looking like the park. And it shows that Ocean were willing to change things up as the years went on. Rodger Rabbit in Hare raising Havoc. A 1992 release by Blue Sky, and it might just be one of the nicest looking games in this episode.
He's going back to the science lab! Please don't.
And it also has some nicely done speech that was taken from the film. The game is, well, it's sort of a puzzle platformer. That is a take on the cartoon from the start of the movie, and in many ways gets what the film, or at least this part of the film, was trying to do, even if the gameplay is a little on the weak side. But the lovely animated graphics and samples makes up for it, right? The basic goal is that you have to work our way out of each area as we're trying to find the baby. Now that will require moving stuff around, finding objects and then using them on the right parts of the level, as well as working out how to start the wacky chain of events that will eventually send you flying around the map, bouncing off everything, and then eventually making it out to the next area. Now obviously all of this is against the clock, as there had to be something pushing you forward, as well as making sure that you couldn't finish it on your first attempt. So the real challenge is just working out how we need to do everything, because most of this is toon logic. And it's not just a case of just triggering the start of the sequence and sitting back and watching it all unfurl. You do have some amount of limited control, as you're going to need to make sure that Rodger travels in the right direction. Now if you know what you're doing, then this is easily the shortest game in the video. But if you didn't have a guide or a handy video, it would have taken, well, a good while to figure it all out. Now obviously this is missing most of the film, but I think this has done a great job of capturing the look and style of that opening short.
Here goes nothing. Yeah! Uh-oh. I'm coming, baby, Hare.
The Karate Kid Part 2. From Microdeal in 1987, and this might be the earliest game on the list, and it's a beat 'em up, but not in the Street Fighter 2 style, as that was still a few years away. This is more like International Karate, not even IK Plus, as that was still in development. Now you attack by pushing different directions on the joystick, with you having a second set of moves by holding down the fire button. Now this doesn't result in the smoothest fights you've ever seen, but it is animated well for the time, even if I don't think this is really pushing the boundaries of the hardware. Yeah, the backgrounds look nice, and it does attempt to recreate the various scenes from the film, if you can actually get that far enough to see them, that is, as the controls and the hit detection do not do this game any favours. Punches and kicks will just fly past your opponent. They have to be so precise. So making anything actually land is really hard. Possibly the nicest looking part of this is the mini games, which we'll come across every so often, like trying to catch a fly, or building up power to break the ice. Not that the gameplay is really up to much for these parts either, and wow, that music is not great. This got a bit of an interesting budget release a few years later, as they scrubbed the Karate Kid license and released it as Shaolin Warriors. Although trying to find that version isn't particularly easy, so I couldn't tell you what changes they made to scrub it out. But overall, I think this is a game that tried to do something in keeping with its license, even if it might have been better a few years later when the beat-em-up genre worked out how to do it better. Robocop 3. Or should that be Robocop 3D? A digital image design game that was published by, yes, Ocean in 1992. This is from a company who were well known for their 3D games, so it would be no surprise to find out that this is also in 3D, and I'd class it as a 3D adventure. Well, once you get past the nicely done cutscenes if you play the story mode. And we get some very chunky polygons as we have to drive around this reasonably sized city. as we'll have to do our best Chase HQ impression and bash the van out of commission, with some decent options for the various camera angles. And then we'll have to head out on foot through a building to take out the perps, all while protecting the innocents. All of which is controlled by the player directly, as you'll direct Robocop around these small areas trying to find the various targets. And because this is based on Robocop 3, we also have a flying section due to that silly jetpack. Most of the game is done in a first-person view, even if you do have the option for other angles. But I think it's clear that this was what they were going for. Well, outside of when you then have to get to the section where you need to punch out the ninja robot. That doesn't work quite well there. Now this is easily one of the more impressive and ambitious film license games in this video. And considering the type of games that Robocop got in the past, it's amazing what we got for easily the worst of that original trilogy. It makes you wonder if this was always planned as a tie-in for the film. The game was marred at launch due to the worst copy protection in the form of a dongle that you had to plug into the computer before the game would even start, and it didn't even fit all the Amiga models either. And there we have it. Did you guess what the rules were? Well, the obvious one was that there could only be one game per genre, and I included what I thought was the better example of each one. It also had to be a game aimed at just the home computers, so no games with console ports, or ported from the consoles to the Amiga. And if there were ports to other computers, then the Amiga one had to be best or equal to the rest. So what was that game that came close to breaking the rules? Well, Robocop 3. You really could call it a multi-format game, but I feel it was less about trying to string a set of smaller games together, and more that it flowed from one style to the next. And with that, I think we're just about done. But before I go, I'd like to thank you for getting this far. And I'd also like to give an IMAX size thanks to my amazing Patreons, who you can see on screen right now. Not only did they get to see this video a whole week early, but they also got it without adverts. And if you'd like to join them for free, there will be a link in the description. Or you can join our amazing Discord. So until next time, I was the Goldfish. That was a harder video to make than I expected, and this was Goldfish on Games.